Pucks with Haggs is brought to you by Prize Picks and the Game Time app.
Pucks with Haggs, powered by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network. Welcome to the Pucks with Haggs podcast. I am your host, Joe Haggerty. You can find my work at joehaggerty.substack.com. Subscribe and get yourself a premium membership. You get all of my NHL and Bruins writing sent straight directly to your inbox. I also write columns 3 times a week for the Boston Sports Journal, so go to bostonsportsjournal.com and check all of that out. This is the 156th episode of the Pucks with Haggs podcast, so thank you very much, everybody out there, for listening. With me today, I have the New England Hockey Journal's Evan Marinofsky, who you can see him in the New England Hockey Journal. You can see him at the prep school rinks. You can see him on Nesson. What other outlets and things are you doing, Evan? Give us a list of all the stuff that you're doing.
Oh, God. Well, that stuff for sure. Bruins Beat on the same, YouTube channel as you. And, I think you'd hit all the spots. I think
Nice.
That's some MIAA games, high school, and
an
occasional Bruins game every now and again. So,
do you go to college games too?
No, that's the one area that, we do we have some, writers who do a little bit of that. I don't get into that. I used to when I was with NCAA.com. I was like their college hockey guy, but I love the college game. We just don't do like a ton with it. So
that's more like the features in New England Hockey Journal, right? Somebody will go in and talk to the kids. Or
yes, that's exactly it. Someone will do a magazine story on that, but usually it's not me. I mean, again, it's for me right now. It's prep, prospects, high school. That's our bread and butter. So
that's right. That is Evan Marinofsky's sweet spot, is for the preps, talking to him about the young kids as they're coming up through the system. So he knows like the guys that are in college now because he saw them before. A lot of those Team USA kids that won the World Juniors. Yeah, you've seen those guys plenty of times.
When Teddy Stiga scored that winner the other night, I almost jumped through the television. I was like, "Holy crap!" Because I met that kid probably 2 years ago, and I didn't even watch him at Belmont Hill. That was like we did some stuff on him at the program, and I remember watching that kid play in a 3-on-3 league with the New England Crows at New England Sports Center, and so Danny this is getting into the weeds, but Danny Resendez runs that, and his son is Landon Resendez, who's a BC commit, who'll go to BC next year. He's a great kid. He's from Marlboro. And I texted him after that goal, and I said, Teddy Stiga learned how to play 3-on-3 hockey with those New England Crows 3-on-3 summer leagues. And I remember watching that. So it's funny that to think back and be like, oh my God, that's where that kind of originated from. So yeah, it's a fun job. And that's a fun job. Get payoffs like that, which is nice.
Absolutely. And it's a small world too, as far as the New England hockey world and the Massachusetts hockey world goes. And Evan is right in the thick of it. Let's thank our sponsors before we get to our show today, which, the Bruins have a five game.
What are we talking about today, Haggs? Yeah, I don't know. What are we going to talk about today?
Suspense is killing me. Bruins 5-game losing streak. People in the balcony chanting "Fire Sweeney" in the third period. The people pissed off and booing and catcalling the team in the third period, very unhappy with what's going on. It's not a mystery as to what we're going to be talking about today. But before we get to that, let's get to Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. And let's also talk about Game Time. Our friends at Game Time will supply you with any kind of ticket: sports, comedy, theater, whatever. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it, Evan?
It is game time.
Game time.
That's game time, as Conor would say.
Not game time for the Boston Bruins, though.
No, God, no. They didn't know the game started on Tuesday night. They didn't know what time it began.
Outshot 14-4 in the first period. Outscored 1-0 in the first period. Like, really, we're never in that game at any point. Just some bad sequences, bad play from, a lot, pretty much top to bottom, everybody. Some disgusted quotes afterwards. Let's get to this. As I said, it's a 5-game losing streak now. The first 2 games, they couldn't score goals. The second 2 games, they just got beat by like a goal, but it was like kind of a shootout back and forth with both teams scoring and not a lot of defense. And I was talking to Marchand about this after the game. You could almost see the progression of the Bruins straying away from what they do, where they couldn't do anything offensively the first couple of games on that road trip against Washington and New York. You saw things loosen up a little defensively, and they were getting a little bit more offense against Toronto. Same sort of formula played out in the last game. And now we see, just an absolute non-effort against the Oilers, where there was no attention to detail, no defense, no offense either, really. So they didn't even get the offense for sacrificing the defense. And they lose 4-0. A lot of that's as vocal as I've heard the Bruins fans in the third period in a while, just really being on the team. The Fire Sweeney chant was brand new. I'd never heard that before. It was very audible in the third period. So clearly there's some upset at what fans are watching on the ice. And I understand it with the money that they pay for tickets, they want to see a good product. And that was part of the last month, 2 months, Evan. I thought one of the underplayed stories was they were playing really good hockey at home. They were playing much better at home. They were winning a ton of games. They were putting on a good product for the fans. It was good. They were in a good space as far as all that went. And last night, man, was just the complete opposite, a 180-degree turn from that. Charlie Coyle after the game basically asked what went wrong, said they wanted it more. I think it's pretty simple. I think it was a basic lack of urgency. A lot of things that are embarrassing to say right now. They just wanted it more. Our identity is something we need to work on, clearly. We know what's in here. We've seen it and we've shown it. But this last little stretch, we've swayed away from it for whatever reasons. And Brad Marchand afterwards. We don't need to score a lot of goals to win games. What we've always tried to do is be really good defensively, and then we need to be comfortable in 1-0, 2-1 games, and we've gotten away from that a bit. We're definitely forcing the offense at the wrong areas at the wrong times, and it is backfiring. We also need to tighten up defensively, and with that combination, it's been a recipe for disaster. So it's on us to play a better brand of hockey that we were before the holiday break. It's in here. We've shown that we can do it. We just need to get back to that. I mean, by and large, I agree with what they're saying. They are going to get back to it. But I think one of the things we've seen, and Charlie Coyle was visibly exasperated after the game. He looked pissed. And one of the things he also mentioned was it shouldn't take, 5 games to figure this out. It shouldn't take 5 games to have a wake-up call where you get dope slapped by the Oilers and decide, we need to get back to hard work and what we do to win games here. But I still think they're a playoff team. I still think they'll be in at the end of the year, even though they're giving away games that they should be winning with. Tampa and Ottawa have so many games in hand on them. And every time they waste points or waste a game, it's hurting them as far as fending off those teams once they catch up in games played. But what's your take on what we've seen the last 5 games, and specifically that ugly loss to the Oilers on Tuesday night? Where the fans were just ready and waiting to start chanting about firing people and getting all over the players. How do you view last night in the scope of this season and what we've seen lately out of the Bruins?
Oh, well, it's fun. I think, you look at last night, it's if Twitter came to life at a game, that's what that would look like.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I'll start with the Oiler game. It looked like two teams on completely different levels. The Oilers were faster, more skilled, higher compete, won way more battles. I mean, they just trounced the Bruins. 4-0 doesn't do it justice. Swayman actually played really well. I thought you actually got a pretty good night out of Jeremy Swayman, and I think that's why it wasn't a bigger loss. And
I will say, Evan, Edmonton's deep. Edmonton's got a friggin' wagon. They've got Adam Enrique and Jeff Skinner hanging out on second and third lines, and they've got a lot of talent on that roster that I think is much, much higher talent level, no question, than the Bruins.
And they're still not even first in the Pacific. They're second. They're they 53 points. They're probably fourth. I think they're fourth overall in the West. So they're a good team. They'll be a cup contender, but they've also kind of had their difficulties this year. I think my biggest takeaway, from last night and from the last bunch of games is they don't look like a playoff team. They don't look like a playoff team, and they will probably end up being a playoff team. They're in the playoffs right now. The third in the Atlantic still.
Yes.
And that speaks to how bad the East has been, how everyone's been underperforming. It's a whole lot of mid. But man, that product is not going deep in the
A
playoffs.
whole lot of mid. That is Evan's 20s are showing right there as we speak.
It is.
Just
It
call
is
the Eastern Conference mid.
a lot of mediocre, underperforming teams. Yes, I sound like your son. Isn't that great? But it's true,
Eastern
and I
Conference
think
is so mid.
it's so mid. It is, and I think that's the thing that I look at, and this team doesn't deserve to be in the playoffs. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Like, they don't play like a playoff team. They have way too many off nights.
Well, the goal differential, I think they're the only team in a playoff spot that's a negative goal difference. And it's not even like a -5. It's like minus 25.
Yeah. I think it's the worst it's been all year. And I look at that, and we'll probably talk in this episode about Sweeney and what direction they should head in. And I know they're trying to make the playoffs, obviously. I know they spent a lot of money on this team in the offseason. And look, I thought this team would be way better than it has been. I did. I thought this roster, I thought guys like Elias Lindholm and Nikita Zadorov, or at least Elias Lindholm, would elevate guys and would create more offense and be better defensively. And that hasn't been the case at all. And we'll get into that in a bit. But my biggest take from these last couple games is they don't look like a playoff team. And, they can make the playoffs this year, and that's all fun and games. But if you're going to make the playoffs this year and potentially sacrifice assets you could get to help you in future years and to supplement this core better, because clearly this core is not supplemented well. The core is not doing much, by the way. Pasternak's been better lately, but like the core, McAvoy's been bad of late. Like Swayman's obviously had an off year.
No, McAvoy has been terrible the last couple of games, and last night was awful. And really, it's interesting with McAvoy. I feel like he's kind of the bellwether of this team. Like, you can understand and see where the Bruins are going based on the way that McAvoy is playing. When they're at their best, he plays 25 minutes of like super two-way hockey, plays great in the D zone, will move the puck, plays physical, shoots pucks from the point and gets them through, does not make a lot of mistakes as far as being too aggressive offensively, getting out of position, like chasing things. But when he gets into these stages like he is, and he's one of the players I look at that it looks like he's really chasing, trying to create offense at the cost of doing his first job, and what his biggest priority should be is being a defenseman and just playing, that way. You can see a lot of that in his game. And then there's other times where, like, he just got beaten by Austin Matthews on that play below the goal line. When Matthews feeds it out into the slot for the goal. He's just getting beaten by another player. And we see that happen sometimes too. Like that I can accept, and that will just happen from time to time, especially a guy like Austin Matthews. But like when McAvoy is making mistakes, like he's making, like not playing his position and just doing things that he shouldn't be doing and kind of freelancing a little bit, like that really hurts the team. And it's frankly, it's not something a leader should be doing. Like, I've always had my issues with Charlie McAvoy as a leader on this team. Like, he makes the money to do it. He plays the role to do it. But I think the way he approaches things sometimes, it's not what you want to see out of a guy in a leadership position that's setting the tone for everybody else. And I thought last night was one of those games for him.
Well, did you see who didn't speak after last night's game?
Yeah.
By the way, I was not there, so I can't judge.
This is what was asked for last night, Evan. At least from my perspective, who we wanted to talk to after the game was the leadership group. That's who we wanted to talk to. We weren't given individual names of I want to talk to this guy, I want to talk to this guy. The message was we want to talk to the leadership group. And you know who didn't come out last night as a part of the leadership group? Charlie McAvoy and David Pastrnak.
Yep.
Neither one of them came out to talk.
And that's been the norm this year for a lot, correct?
Yep. It was Charlie Coyle front and center. He was the first one.
Who's been a leader, by the way, who's been a real public leader.
Who I think should have a letter instead of one of those other guys. I'm going to go on this probably rant for the rest of the year and years after this until it changes, until it happens. Charlie Coyle should have an A or not the C. I think Marchand's a good captain, but I think Charlie Coyle should have one of those A's. He should have a letter on his sweater. He is a leader on that team. He is a guy that demands excellence. He is a guy that plays the right way. He's, talent-wise, he's never going to be the guy that's going to carry them for 3 weeks at a time and, score goals like Pastrnak can. But the way he approaches the game, the way he handles his business, the way he does everything, he's a leader. like he should be one of the guys wearing a letter. It shouldn't be about who's making the most money and who's the best player on the team just automatically getting the letter. Because some of those guys, like, they aren't consistent enough with what they do on a nightly basis to be a leader. Like, they just aren't. And you know, at times I put Pastrnak and McAvoy in that category. And you know, it was telling to me last night that we asked to talk to the leaders after the game, and the first guy all by himself out there was Charlie Coyle. He was the first one to talk, and then it was Lindholm and Zadorov, and Trent Frederick went out there to talk because of that, you know, poor choice in hindsight to fight and get in the penalty box, and they gave up a power play goal. And then and Marchand at the end, and that was it.
Yeah, and that's been the norm. And that's why, like, we'll get into. I imagine we'll get into sort of where they should go from here. And I keep getting texts from people, you know, just fans or onlookers being like, you know, they got to trade everybody, even trade Marchand. And like, you could get a lot from Marchand for sure, but I don't trust that room losing Marchand. I don't trust the leadership in that room if Brad Marchand is not there.
Yep.
I don't. Yep. I have yet to see enough out of David Pastrnak or Charlie McAvoy to get the C. I haven't seen enough.
No.
And that is my main concern. Not even, you know, I want Brad Marchand to retire a Bruin, not even, you know, what that might do to the rest of the room. It's what is that leadership vacuum? Who is filling that? Because I don't know who would if they lost Brad Marchand. And one other thing I'll add about McAvoy, and this is sort of, he's been bad of late. But another thing that this team continues to come up short on is a defensive partner for him.
Yeah.
A consistent partner. Like, love Parker Wotherspoon. Think he's a, you know, great journeyman.
Yeah.
Good 7th D. Shouldn't be out there against McDavid.
Yep.
Sorry. Like, I see another Parker Wotherspoon just grab the puck behind his own net and throw it around the boards. Like one of those raps I do in men's league when I'm out of breath. Like, I don't want to see that. And that shouldn't be Charlie, you know, that shouldn't be happening on Charlie McAvoy's left side. And that's not Parker Wotherspoon's fault. That's the front office's fault for continuing to not be able to find him a defensive partner, because Zadorov is on and off as his guy. Grzelcyk's obviously gone. They haven't really found McAvoy a partner since Chara left.
Well, like, I mean, yeah, he was, I think the problem, and they, like, if down.
And I'm not making excuses for McAvoy, by the way.
No, well,
highlighting some more problems.
Part of the point I'm going to make is that, like, McAvoy is at a level in his NHL career where he should be making his partner better and not relying on his
That's
partner.
The other end of it, yes.
You know what I mean? Like, he should be the one that's making his partner better and making anybody that plays with him a better player, instead of, like, trying to find somebody that's going to make him better and is going to be the right partner with him. That's as much a McAvoy issue as it's a partner issue. And I have the same problem with Pastrnak and people complaining that he's not playing with enough talent too. It's like, that guy makes enough money and that guy is established enough as an NHL player that he should be driving a line. He should be carrying that line and making the other two guys better around him, instead of complaining that he's not playing with enough talent. And
he kind of did that last year. He did do that last year.
Yes.
This year it hasn't been as prevalent.
Yeah. And those are the issues I have. Like, look, there's a couple different ways to look at this. The Bruins have downplayed Matt Grzelcyk's absence, and you know, I think McAvoy struggled a bit this year without Grzelcyk there as usual partner and the guy he liked to play with before. And if you look at Grzelcyk, I think he would lead the Bruins defenseman in assists based on what he's done this year in Pittsburgh, which is interesting. I'm not saying that he should have stayed. I'm not saying that he's the answer, because I think he's just somebody that could get picked on because of his size and really was not going to help you in the playoffs at all. So I think they moved on from him, and rightfully so. And I think, you know, a lot of these players that are kind of struggling at points right now and look slow at times, I think are going to help them in the playoffs, and they're going to be a better team in the playoffs for some of these guys that they have once the pace slows down a little bit in the postseason, like it always does.
You think?
Yes, I do. I think they're going to be a better team in the playoffs than they are during the regular season. Now, Evan, I'm not saying they're going to win playoff series, because I am with you that they look like a borderline playoff team that's probably going to get in, probably going to end up getting a wild card, because I think Tampa's going to pass them once they catch up in games played. Tampa's got a lot of games in hand. They got like 5 games in hand on the Bruins, something like that. And they're playing each other like 2 or 3 times in the next few weeks, which will be really interesting. But I think Tampa will end up passing them. I think they will end up probably a wild card team. And I think they'll end up probably being a tough out. I think they'll probably play a pretty good playoff series. whoever they play, but I don't even see them winning a round based on what I see, based on who they are. Like, they would need to bring in a guy that can really help them offensively, a winger that can really put the puck in the net and help them offensively and kind of lock down their top six and sort of solidify, the rest of the forward spots. If they want to be even like begin to approach maybe beating a team in the first round, although there's also the Jeremy Swayman dimension of like, what if he like turns it up a notch in the playoffs too, and like kind of, shakes off whatever has been going on during the regular season and takes it to like the dominant level he was at last year too, which he's shown that he can do. Like, there's different things at play in the playoffs for the Bruins, where I'm not going to completely rule them out and say they're going to be like a flame out dud based on the goal differential and the way they've looked at their worst. But I agree with you that they just don't look like they're legit contender. They don't look like they're a legit like threat to like win a couple rounds. They look like they'd be lucky to get to the second round right now. They look like they're going to get in, and they'd be very fortunate to get to the second round if they could get there. Like, they're not going to be able to beat a quality team in the playoffs.
Haggs, if the East was better, if the East was not mid, right? Yeah. If
Yes.
Tampa wasn't 5 games behind you, and there's still only 1 point behind you, you have 5 games on Tampa.
If some of the teams in the East had more Riz, that's what you're trying to say.
That's exactly it. That's all they need.
Okay.
But, Ottawa is, I know they're missing Linus Ullmark. They were hot. They've lost 3 in a row. But, like, if Tampa jumps up and kicks you out of the third spot, and then you're in the wild card, if Pittsburgh turns it up a little bit, if, I don't, if the Rangers were better, right? Like, that's the other thing. So, like, that's another, another team. You even throw the Islanders in there. I don't trust Montreal, Detroit, Philadelphia, Buffalo yet, but like those other teams, right? They would be, they would be borderline out of the playoffs, maybe a couple points away from the wild card. And we'd be talking about, wonder if they're going to have like the 12th overall pick, maybe the 10th overall. Like, that's the way they're playing. And that's why, like, when we get into sort of discussions of what this team should do, I've kind of said this all year, even when they've been really good, of like, please don't give up legitimate assets at the deadline.
No.
But I said that when they were good. When I look at what they're doing now and how they're playing against playoff teams, and if you notice, they're losing by 1 or 2 goals to non-playoff teams, and they're getting smacked around by playoff teams. And it's been the narrative all year. They can't really beat good teams. That's why when they beat the Capitals the 2 days before Christmas, it was like, holy crap, this could be something different. I don't think a retool is a bad idea. The problem with that is I don't think they are down to do that, because they believe if they get in the playoffs that, with this roster, they can go on a run and that they're better suited for the playoffs and all that fun stuff. But again, like I tweeted this last night, who you have coming up? You got the Lightning twice, you got the Panthers, then you got Ottawa.
Yeah.
And this was a hard stretch to end December and begin January, and you're 0-4-1 already. Would not shock me if you're, if you get 1 or 2 wins out of the next bunch of games, but that doesn't salvage what has been a really bad stretch, showing that against playoff teams and teams that should be in the playoffs, like the Rangers, you're not quite there. You're not quite there. And that's why, like, again, you have a guy like Trent Frederick, who I just read the Athletic has like at 11th on their trade board, which might be low considering they have like Elias Pettersson and JT Miller as 1 and 2. And I don't know if those guys are leaving Vancouver.
Yeah. Well,
but I think you have pieces there that you could deal. We'll get into this in a bit, I imagine.
Yeah. Either way, I think they should trade Trent Frederick at the trade deadline. I'm definitely like, I think they can contend for a playoff spot. They've taken care of Kastelik. They can take care of Justin Brazeau, make decisions on those 2 to keep them at the expense of Trent Frederick and deal him for assets before the deadline. I think you can do all that, while still contending for a playoff spot. I think you can accomplish all of those things. And I've been pretty adamant the last couple of weeks. I think they need to, instead of letting Frederick walk away like it's probably going to happen in free agency, a la Jake DeBrusk and Torrey Krug, for nothing, you need to get something for him. You need to get assets.
Completely
try
agree.
to recoup like maybe your first round pick that you spent on him, that late first round pick, certainly a second round pick and maybe a prospect. Like, you need to get some assets back for that player before he like signs in St. Louis and goes back to Montgomery or wherever the hell he's going.
And the other thing is, I don't think you necessarily need to do player for player. You can get draft picks or assets back, because you can replace his production internally.
Yes.
You have Matt Patra, Call up Merkulov. Like, I'm at the point where it's like, I want to see this roster is not getting it done. And I'm fine with Joe Sacco, by the way, not juggling his lines every 5 seconds. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
But we've seen enough over the last couple weeks. Ironically enough, the third line was actually their best line against Edmonton. But we've seen enough over the last couple weeks. I want to see Merkulov. I want to see Patra. Let's see what these young guys can do. And, again, you're not getting a lot of production out of Frederick or
it is painful to me to
Kepke,
see how
guys like
close,
that. You're not getting much out of these guys.
It is painful to see how close Wahlstrom is to like scoring goals.
Wallstrom, another one.
But he can't pop one in right now because that guy is dying to score a goal. All right, we're going to take a break and get right back to this. Let's stop and pause to give some love to Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America and the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Instead of battling thousands of other players that could be pros or sharks, you simply pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you watch the winnings roll right in. It's fun and super simple. Prize Picks is the best way to win real money during the football playoffs. Which players are going off, which ones aren't. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on Prize Picks. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. That's right. I said Taco Tuesday. I said it. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. Think Lamar Jackson will get more than 250 passing yards next week. Will Patrick Mahomes pass for more than 1.5 touchdowns? That is this weekend, right? Not next week anymore. Cook up hot takes with your friends and win real money this football season when you and your crew use Prize Picks. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn it into real money. Make your holidays bigger and brighter with Prize Picks, the best place to get real money action while watching your favorite sports. You can win up to 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks. They also offer MasterCard now for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. I think I agree with you that like Frederick is not somebody that can't be replaced. Like I think you look at him right now, he's really not even doing that much for you. So he's
going to go to another team and like go right back to being a 40-point player.
Well, he probably
everything,
will.
everything. You
right?
know it's going to happen.
It probably will, but I mean, I think they're definitely paving the way to trade him, put Patra in as the third line center, leave Coyle as the wing with Lindholm and Marchand. Like, I think we've seen already sort of things set in motion as to what they believe they can do or will do once they make the trade. And they're just looking at see how it all looks right now. But like, Frederick is what he is. Like, he's never going to be like the absolute tough guy that you want him to be, like the intimidating, like, power forward type guy, like a Milan Lucic type player. He's never going to be that guy. He is what he is, which is he's a pretty decent offensive player. He's, a hard-nosed guy. He'll hit. He's got good size. Every once in a while, he'll stand up for a teammate. He's very well liked in the room. Like, he's a good kid.
Beat the bag out of Corey Perry last night.
Oh, he did. God. He beat the living stud out of him.
God.
The bloody hand to prove it after punching the back of his helmet 12 times.
Elder abuse. It's crazy Corey Perry's still in the league. He was winning cups when I was like in first or second grade.
The best part was Corey Perry in the box afterwards. He's looking at Frederick like, what did I do? What did you pick me up for? He was like all up in arms about it. But like, it was great that he got the frustration out, but like, he's also always been a guy like that has bad timing with that. Like, he's never understood the rhythm of when to do that and when it's called for.
I know Bruins were in like a little ozone sequence. Like, they had just settled the puck down, and I think they were passing it around when all of a sudden you hear the whistle blow and you see all the fans stand up and it's the other end of the ice. Like,
and it was the exact wrong time to do it, because then McDavid pots that power play goal and that's it. It's friggin' done. But that's happened a lot with him. It seems like there's always been like his timing has been off when he decides to do that stuff. And even playing with like some traditional tough guys and traditional guys that have played that role, it's never really rubbed off on him like the right way to sort of handle that role and to be that guy. So like I think it's possible, and I think this is one. I'm not in the fired on Sweeney camp, not even close. I think Bruins fans don't appreciate like what he's done over the course of his tenure here.
Yeah, I'm not there either, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm not.
So
people always try to get me to say it. I'm like, I'm not.
No.
He's been fine over the last couple of years.
Yes. But like, I think the thing, they do need to change the way they're doing business a little bit, I believe. And they need to view it a little differently, where I think you're bang on when you talk about, like, they can't view it like, oh, we just need to get in the playoffs and Swayman could get hot, or these guys are going to play more like the Panthers, like we envisioned when we signed them, and like all this stuff is going to happen. You can't keep everybody together, wish for something to happen that you haven't seen evidence of all year, and then, bank all your future assets on it, and, turn away potential future assets and things that could bring you assets to do that. I think this is changing, trading Frederick before the deadline would be a change in the way the Bruins do business, and I think they have to do it.
I agree, and it's funny. I'm not in this fire Sweeney camp. I know a lot of people want to, nix him immediately.
Yep.
And I think that's bad business.
Yep.
I've said all along, because when they fired Montgomery, people were like, it should have been Sweeney, and it's like, but it would never have been done Sweeney, because A, he's the GM, so that takes longer to move. But the other part of it is, ownership gave him a big old pat on the back. I forget, it was one of the opening press conferences of the season. They were all for Don Sweeney and Cam Neely, and they gave him a multi-year contract extension after the 21-22 season. We don't know how long that's for, so it has been 3 years. There's been no reporting about how this is his last year contractually, so I can't imagine that it is.
Yeah.
Where he would kind of lose that good grace, right, is if they start to fall out of the playoffs. So that's like number one. That's what did Chiarelli in.
Yep.
But I also think, like, you look at sort of the money they have tied up contractually, right? Pastrnak has the no move, which makes sense. Elias Lindholm, age 30, no move. We did not expect this contract to look this bad at this point. So that's definitely one. Marchand has the modified no trade. Charlie Coyle has a modified no trade, which is 8-team no trade list. Zacha. But then on D, McAvoy, no movement. Hampus Lindholm, no movement. Nikita Zadorov, no movement. Carlo's a modified no trade, 10-team no trade list. Swayman, it'll kick in next year. So, like, where he could get into trouble in hot water is those guys age poorly. Lindholm, Zadorov, Hampus Lindholm. Those contracts look bad over time. Yeah, I'm saying if they do. I'm not saying that they will.
Yeah.
But if they do, and they're hamstrung with that money, that's when things go wrong for him. I think the other big thing is you do look at sort of the future they've mortgaged to make the playoffs over the last couple of years and to try to win. And that's not his fault. I don't blame him for dealing firsts to try to get that 22-23 season a Stanley Cup. It wasn't his fault that team pooped its pants. Like, it wasn't. But you do look at, and it's the age-old adage of, like, when a team's doing bad or a team is starting to struggle or starting to go bad a little bit, look at their drafting. And it's not so much that they've missed on players. The 2015 stuff was 10 years ago at this point, right? Yes, it was relevant in the 2019 Cup final and all that stuff.
Was.
But it's not super. We've done this before. We've talked about it. It's more so that since 2019 they've made 3 first-round picks.
Yep.
That's what's tough with that. And, like, you have years like 2023 where your first pick is a third rounder. 2022, you didn't have a third rounder. Like, you didn't have a first rounder. 2021, you didn't have a second rounder. 2020, you didn't have a first or a fourth. Like, you made 4 picks in last year's draft in 2024. So, like, to me, that's what's really difficult with this is it's not so much that they're missing on guys, because they've hit on certain guys. I mean, it seems like they've hit on Matt Patra.
Yep.
It's too early to tell with the last 2 years. Pelosi's been a bright spot at Quinnipiac. Low-Rye was a hit in 2020.
Yep.
Like, you have this stuff, Jeremy Swayman in 2017. But, like, to me, and this is why you got to recoup assets, because the best way to supplement this core is not free agency.
No.
If anything was proven this summer, it is that doesn't do it. You can get a good 4th-line grinder in free agency for sure. Or you can get,
especially the Bruins. They see their wheelhouse seems to be finding those kind of guys, the backfill roster guys, the bottom 6 forwards, the bottom pairing D, the guys that are overlooked by other teams that can come in and are legit NHL players. That is their wheelhouse as far as evaluating talent and bringing in free agents. I agree with you. Like, they have not done well as far as, like, spending lots of money on guys historically and bringing them in, aside from Zdeno Chara.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing where it's like, that, and I think that's across the league. Rarely do you have a team get a core guy out of free agency. I think the Rangers with Panarin, I mean, that was like a 1 in a million shot that guy would hit free agency the way that he did. And Tavares a little bit with the Leafs, but like it's very few and far between.
With Bobrovsky too.
That's right. That's another one. But at the time we were like, what are they doing? And I think they just drafted Spencer Knight but my whole point is like, you are going to get your next core pieces through the draft and through developing. And I think that's why it's so infuriating that guys like Patra are not being brought up. You're not seeing what you have. Georgi Merkulov is not being given a fair shot at the NHL level. Fabian Lysell, we've said for a long time, doesn't have a lot of trade value. Let's at least see what he can do in the NHL. I mean, they gave him one game. Like, I think people want to see something different. And I don't think there would be that much of a drop-off from, if you replaced Frederick with Matt Patra, and let's say you replaced Oliver Wahlstrom, just roster-wise, with like a Georgi Merkulov or a Lysell, would it be that different? Would it be that different? I mean, I'm with you. Wahlstrom's come close to scoring.
I think
but you're still not getting a lot out of it.
I watched the game Lysell played, and I've watched the games that Wahlstrom played, and Wahlstrom is a much better player than Fabian Lysell.
Sure, but I'm saying
he is a much better NHL player. I just feel like there is a big difference.
But also Lysell was sat for most of the third period you're up 4-0 against
because he was invisible. He didn't do anything in that game. Like everybody was making a big deal.
He helped out on the first goal. He did help out on the first goal.
What's that?
He helped out on the first goal.
Yeah, he helped out a little bit. Did he get an assist? No.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
He pushed the puck down low or whatever. Like great, he didn't.
I'm not saying the guy.
When he had the puck, and
I'm not saying that he's.
People were acting after the game was over like he scored the friggin' goal. Like they were asking him about like being out on the ice for the his first shift where the team scored a goal. Somebody else scored a goal like he scored. And this is like my thing with Lysell, and what aggravates me is people are trying to make him out to be this bigger than he is. Or people want him to succeed when it just hasn't been there. And that was another example of it to me. If he goes out and he makes a great pass to set a guy up, he scores the goal himself, I think go nuts. Write all these glowing things and ask him how exciting it was after the game. When he's just friggin' on the ice, when other people score and make plays to score, and they act like he was a significant piece of that when he really wasn't. And he was, he did something to help create that goal. And wasn't it special that he was on the ice when they scored a goal in his first shift? It would be special if he scored. It would be special if he did something, if he made a play. He didn't do any of that, and people were acting like he did after the game was over and writing it up like he did. And this has like been a continued treatment of Fabian Lysell, I feel like, all through his Bruins pathway to development, where people are just rooting him on and want him to be something that he's not turning into. I don't see an NHL player when I see him. I don't see a guy that makes an impact at the NHL level. Same with Merkulov. Merkulov, I think, is better than Lysell. I've honestly liked his game a little more at the NHL level, and I'm kind of with you on Merkulov, where I think they could bring him up and he'd be okay, and he would certainly maybe help on the power play, and there's some areas where he would help. But if you put a guy like Oliver Wahlstrom side by side with Fabian Lysell, and you watch the two of them play shift by shift, you would say it's not even close. Like, I've watched Wahlstrom a lot just to see what kind of game he has. He draws penalties. He plays more physical than I thought he did. He definitely can shoot the puck and get shots on net. He is making things happen almost every shift when he's out there. He's like this. It's frustrating for him, I'm sure, because he's been very close to scoring a bunch of times, and it just hasn't happened yet. But I didn't see any of that. And yes, I'm with you. Maybe they'll give Lysell a few more chances and see if something pops and something else happens. But I didn't see anything in that first game from Fabian Lysell to make me think he deserved another shot or he needed another shot. I feel like on some level they did him a solid and brought him up before his parents went back to Sweden so his family could watch him play, even though he kind of didn't deserve it with the way he was playing in Providence this year, because he would have come up with the NHL at the end of last year and he got hurt and he didn't get his chance. So they threw him kind of a bone during the holidays this year with his family here, and it was nice. But I don't think anything he did, like playing-wise in Providence the first few months of the year, really, really deserved this promotion. And he played like it when he got up here. I didn't see a guy that is ready to make any kind of an impact.
I mean, I'm not saying he's Sam Reinhart, and I think he's had numerous issues adjusting to the American game or to the North American game in Providence for sure, but we won't know if we don't see it up here. And I think that's the one thing where, like, you know, they've had him in their system for 3 years now, I think. So they've had their hands all over him for 3 years. And I know that they're low on him. I get that. But Wahlstrom comes in off the scrap heap. And I like Wahlstrom. I do. I like, you know, I've seen the same things you've seen, but he hasn't been producing.
No.
He hasn't been producing. And I think that's the one thing with that, where it's like, you have this guy come in who, yes, he was a 14th overall pick. He's a local guy. Look, I love that. But he hasn't been producing. And you have guys in the system who you've had for 2-3 years now, like, you know, Merkulov. And I know Merkulov's not a wing. He's a center. But still, like, you have guys in the system who have been producing, who you've at least handcrafted yourself, and you're not giving them some looks. And it's not like this is a Stanley Cup contending team. It's not like everything is working. It's not. I wouldn't be shocked if they waive Wahlstrom at some point because the production hasn't been there. And I agree with you. Like, he hasn't been a complete bust, but you need to see what you have in those guys, at least a little bit at the NHL level. And they also could use a dosage of skill. I know Wahlstrom has a great shot. It's not going in right now. The skill is whatever. At least Lysell and Merkulov, there is that hope, and there has been a little bit, especially with Merkulov, shown that he does have pretty good hands. Merkulov has good hands. He can create offensively. Why not try to see that at the NHL level? Because right now, this roster, these guys, they're not bringing that dosage. You look at a team like the Oilers, a lot of skill. I'm not saying Merkulov compares to any of them, but he has a little more of a higher ceiling skill-wise than a lot of guys on this current roster. And I don't, at some point, I'm not saying all three come up at the same time. They're not going to do that. And I think that doesn't make any sense logistically because it doesn't.
No.
But to me, I mean, you've got to see what you have out of a guy like Merkulov, and I do think out of a guy like Lysell too. Patra should be up. I mean, Patra's been dominating in Providence, and I get wanting to build his confidence up for sure, but this team needs a guy like Patra, and I think, you know, it's time for him to come up.
Yeah, I think he's deserved a promotion. He's earned it, and he will be up. I think it's a matter of, like, the other shoe dropping before he comes up, though. There's a move they're going to make that's going to open up a spot for Patra, I think, in the second half of the year. And he's going to come up and play. And the one real question about Patra is just physically, can he handle it? You know, he's still not the biggest guy in the world, and he was not fast enough to be eluding the big hits at the NHL level. And he was taking some pretty good contact because he's not one of those guys that can skate out of it and really elude those kind of things. And he, like, to his point, he's courageous. Like, he puts himself in areas to win puck battles and to get the puck where he's going to get pounded. And you know, I'd say that as a compliment, but he definitely does it. And you're going to have a hard time staying in one piece when you're his size at his age, if you consistently do that. Let's take a break real quick to give some love to our people at Game Time. Good friends out there at Game Time with the tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time for obviously your Bruin tickets, but also if you're looking for Celtics or even comedy or concert tickets as well. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time's Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. The game of the week for this week that would make an outstanding post-holiday buy is the Sunday, January 14th showdown between the Bruins and the Lightning at the Garden. The super deal is $148 for Loge corner seats, section 20, row 10, which is pretty great value for Bruins tickets in this new year. And as we talked about, the Bruins Lightning games are going to be good. Those should be playoff type games, so you're going to want to get in on this. Game Time has priority Game Time picks. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, comedy, concerts, theater, etc. All in pricing. Toggle this feature. It shows the total up front with no surprise fees at the checkout, and the lowest price guarantee. Who doesn't love that? Guaranteed low price, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. But again, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it, Evan?
It's game time.
Game time.
I will also say the best part about that is they also have those flash deals. Which, like, if you're in Boston for the day visiting, or you're, you live in the area, like, you can get really cheap seats, like 2 hours before the game. So that's why I love Game Time as well.
Got to check flash deals. They are not mid, right, Evan?
They're not mid. They're not mid.
Game Time is not even close to mid.
Those are good.
Nothing
those are
mid
good. I
about
like
Game
those.
Time.
No, nothing.
Anything else about the World Juniors, given your prep connections and having watched those games besides Teddy Stiga scoring the overtime game winner, which was pretty awesome because he's a local kid. He lives in Sudbury, right?
He's from Sudbury, yeah.
Yeah.
Sudbury kid. So my biggest takeaway, and I felt this way last year during the World Juniors and the college season, I feel this way this year for sure after the World Juniors. I would give up anything on this roster to get Ryan Leonard.
Yes.
Like
yes.
I truly would.
Love that kid.
The Capitals hit that out of the park. That was an 8th overall pick. I was surprised he didn't go a little higher. He could have went like top 5. And I think if they were redrafting, maybe he does go 6 or 5. I mean, that was also a stacked draft. You had Michkov, you had Bedard, you had Fantilli, Smith. I think he's a pro. Yep. Like, I think that kid is going to be the second coming of Matthew Tkachuk, where there's production, there's physicality.
Huge pain in the ass.
You're going to hate him.
Yes.
Pain in the ass. Bruins fans are going to hate that guy with the Capitals. And I think any team in that division is going to hate Ryan Leonard. But he's someone you want on your team. And I think he's a leader. I think he's got it. He just got it. He's not even like a huge kid either. Like I think he's like 5'10", 5'11", maybe 6 feet. But like just a gamer, and he's a winner. And that's someone that, like, if you had the Caps aren't trading him, but if you somehow had the assets to like go for him, and that's why I also say, like, you need first round picks. You do. You need to be making your first round picks. You saw it with Pastrnak, with the 24th overall pick, getting him. We're trashing McAvoy a little bit, but McAvoy was a first round pick. Guys like Leonard, getting those guys, and yes, you can get them later in the draft if you're lucky. But in the first round, you're getting, potential stars. And, I think that's a great example. And the Capitals are a great example. Remember that 22-23 season? They dealt Hathaway and Orlov to you.
Yep.
Little mini rebuild, little retool, and they're back in it now.
Yep.
Like the Bruins need to be prepared to take 2 steps back, take 4 steps forward. And it's a roundabout way of saying Ryan Leonard is nasty, and I would do anything with Ryan Leonard on my team. So if you want to get the next Ryan Leonard, make your first round picks.
That's a great example, though, like what you just said about the Capitals with that Hathaway Orlov stuff, where they surprised a lot of people when they made that trade, and people weren't expecting them to be available at the deadline. And it was the Capitals basically punting on that season as far as making the playoffs. But it worked out. Like, they got a bunch of draft picks, and it helped them replenish their system. And that is exactly, I think, what we've talked about with the Bruins. Need to be willing to do that. This needs to be one of those years where maybe they roll the dice at the deadline by trading an asset or two to recoup some draft picks and some future assets. And maybe it's 50-50, they make the playoffs, and, maybe they don't. But it will help them replenish their group and get some cheaper talent, guys on entry-level contracts over the next, 3-4 years that they are absolutely going to need, given some of the deals that they've handed out in the last few years. And, to replace Brad Marchand, who's probably going to be retiring in the next couple of years, and Pastrnak is getting closer to 30. And I feel like part of what we're seeing this year is him aging a little bit. I think the production is starting to slow down. I don't know if we're going to see 50, 60 goal seasons out of him anymore as he approaches 30 now. And this is something I think if you're the Bruins, you have to really start thinking about as far as accumulating draft picks and accumulating assets to start replacing these guys and sort of, reloading while they try to compete at the same time. But the Capitals, great example.
Yeah, and I also, like I was talking earlier about that athletic trade board where they have, JT Miller and Elias Pettersson up at the top. And I'm not a Canucks expert, but I know that there's been some drama there and this or that. And people are like, oh, go get Elias Pettersson. And it's like, they don't have the assets to do that. So that's the other thing is like, use the assets you have, make your picks. And as you said, if you can, and this is why I don't think Trent Frederic gets traded like right now. I think it is like a little closer to the deadline because that's when prices go way up because people get crazy.
Yep.
Like if you can trade Frederic and recoup, a second and a prospect or somehow get a first.
Or get a first, yeah.
Do it. I mean, you also look at, and I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this at all. But Kevin Paul DuPont wrote earlier this week in the Globe a column basically saying, the Bruins need a seismic type trade. So, he mentioned the Joe Thornton one, but then Dupes also mentioned, look, they, McAvoy and Pastrnak who can't trade. They have the no move. And like, there's so many guys that have that no move. And he said, well, the only guys who have some value, like Zacha has a 10-team no trade list. Coyle, 8-team no trade list. Carlo is a 10-team no trade list. Like, do you entertain trading those guys? And Zacha, I think, is a tough sell because that's Pasternak's guy.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you can do that. But like Coyle and Carlo, you wonder. I mean, those are leaders. Those are leaders. That's kind of goes back to the leadership thing I mentioned earlier.
Yep.
But like, if you can get legitimate assets in return for one of those guys, like, I don't know, something to think about. It's tough because the right side on defense after McAvoy without Carlo falls off a cliff.
Yep.
So I don't know. That does hurt your chances next year. But you do have, I don't know. You have offensive pieces. If you did deal Coyle, like, I don't think you're fully screwed.
No.
If you're getting assets back, you're taking the 2 steps back to take 3 or 4 steps forward that you hope.
Yeah. So. The problem with that, I guess, is that you're trading guys that give you like an honest to goodness effort every single game. You know what I mean?
Correct.
Like, you're trading guys that are good leaders, good people, like solid, like that give you everything they've got. Instead of like trading out some of the players that maybe are inconsistent in that area. And, you don't always know what you're going to get.
Such as
some of the bigger names on this team that would get you more value in return. Like, but it would turn into a Jacob Trouba level drama situation like the Drury in New York, unfortunately.
If no movement clauses didn't exist, would you entertain a Matthew Tkachuk for Huberdeau type trade with either Pastrnak?
Yeah, Pasta, I would. I think I would be at a point like with what I've seen this year from Pastrnak and what the age that he is, the salary that he makes, like I would entertain it for sure. Based on bringing another player in, or based on just completely reloading the system with multiple first round picks and like a grade A prospect, like you could do that and a pretty good roster player. I would definitely do. And I think he would command a boatload.
Pastrnak for Ryan Leonard first.
Right.
That honestly would be like what the thing would be.
Right.
I'm not kidding.
No, something like that. Yes. I think I am beginning, for a long time I was holding off on that. I'm beginning to warm to like something like that, being something to entertain. Do I think it's going to happen? Is it realistic? No, I don't.
It will never happen.
No.
They won't do it. They would never do it. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. I love Pastrnak. I think he's a phenomenal player.
Yeah.
I think he's your number one offensive guy.
Yep.
He's actually been pretty good of late. He's he's
been really good.
Well.
He got called out last week, and he got called out for his production on by multiple people over multiple platforms, and he responded with back-to-back 2-goal games, which tells me a little bit too that it's in there. You know what I mean? It's just
and he performs in the playoffs. Like that's not the thing. But and this isn't Pasternak's fault. You have a lot of money tied up in one guy. And I think, and I hate when people do this. So I'm kind of being a hypocrite, but you look back at like that 2011 Bruins team, right? They didn't have a superstar up front. They were just deep. They were well-rounded. Guys were producing.
Yep.
And the money was sort of allotted like that, if memory serves. You
Yep.
covered that team. I did not.
Yeah.
But like, to me, I do wonder if your money would be tied up better if you just were deeper, rather than just having one guy, because teams realize that. I mean, you look at the power play, they just focus in on him. And during the playoffs, they just are super physical. They're all over him. And there's not enough around him. And you can blame Sweeney for that too. You can do that.
That's not really.
By the way, they're not trading David Pastrnak.
No,
they are not. This is just, shooting shit.
This is talking in fantasy NHL world. If there were no movement clauses and you could do whatever you wanted, but like
I wrote a story last week that was fantasy world for the MIAA and prep, and people were all like, "This is journalism." And I'm like, I said it 100 times in the story. This isn't real. It's just something different than your typical rankings or your top performers. It's something different. This isn't journalism. I know it's not. Like, shut up.
Hockey people do not like change, Evan. They do not.
No, they hate it.
Outside of the lines, they are not fans of that. I forget what I was going to say now.
I'm sorry.
As far as the Bruins go, I just think in this day and age with the CBA the way it is, it's the NHL is the CBA is built for every NHL team to have 2 or 3 big money players, and then very little middle class, and then a bunch of entry level guys. That's just the way it is now. Like,
Correct.
there's no way to avoid that. It's really difficult to avoid that. I think basically impossible. And that was part of when the lockout happened, when the CBA was put into place. A lot of people predicted what has happened was going to happen based on the way the rules were. And that was, it was going to look a lot more like the NBA, where every team has 2 or 3 guys that make massive amounts of money. And then there's a few middle-class guys. And then there's like a entry-level guys and bottom-level guys all over the place. And that's the way it's gone. The middle class is gone, and it's really difficult to build a team.
It's like America. The middle class is done.
That's right. And it's exactly avoiding what you're talking about, which is having like a bunch of really good players that you're paying like, $4 to $8 million and having a really deep team with a lot of quality players. That's just not the way they wanted it to work, apparently, in the NHL. Certainly not the way the players wanted it to work, because they knew that this was going to end up happening, where it was going to be very top heavy as far as the guys taking up all the cap space and making all the money. But we could go on.
We're not trading David. We're not trading David Pastrnak.
No,
obviously.
We could go on and on forever, but I will give you one last word, Evan. Anything to look out for in preps, or anything you're working on for the Hockey Journal you want to talk about?
Magazine comes out. We have a magazine that runs 6 times a year. It comes out at the end of January. Big story on what the CHL ruling is going to do, not just to college hockey, but to prep, to high school, to the whole hockey landscape. Hockey landscape is about to be drastically impacted, and I go over all of that in there. New TV show comes out at the end of the month. We have a big feature on the Rivers 09s. The irony of the World Juniors, and this is kind of the funny part of my job, is when the World Juniors game started, I was interviewing Rocco Pelosi, who is the the brother of Chris Pelosi,
yes,
who is just nasty, guaranteed to make the NTDP next year. He's at Mount
he's
St. Charles.
A great prospect.
Yeah, that kid's good. And so I was talking to him for a magazine story I'm doing on him. I was talking to him at the beginning of the game. And then the next morning, I was at Rivers shooting a thing for the TV show with Sam Pandolfo, Finn Sears, and Carter Meyer, who are also all should be on that national development team next year, are really good.
You think they're all going to be on it?
I think they all have a legitimate case for it.
Wow.
And I think it's going to be hard not to put all 3 on, because they've been aligned for 7 years. And I think that could end up being the NTDP's next, Perot, Smith, Leonard line.
Yeah.
But, we'll see. We'll see. But my whole point is all 4 of those kids could easily be on the next, or not the next, but World Junior teams down the road.
Yep.
Or could be, or definitely are all guys that are going to be drafted in the NHL at some point. So, look out for that. TV show at the end of the month, magazine at the end of the month, daily content every day on the website. So that's that.
And then Evan will be writing the postmortem for the Rivers hockey team's prospects of competing anytime soon when they lose all 3 of those players to the national
That's
team
right.
program too.
They're gonna lose a good amount, but they'll still be all right. They'll still be okay.
Yeah, there's a pool of hockey talent that's unending around here.
I'll be writing the postmortem on this Bruins team, which is a lot more drama, a lot more to take in.
All right. Thank you, Evan. Let's thank our sponsors again real quick. Prize Picks. We love Prize Picks. Download Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks run your game. Also, our friends at Game Time. If you need tickets, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. But again, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it, Evan?
It's game time all the time.
Game Time, and Game Time is never not mid, any way, shape, or form. Game Time is full. They have Mad Riz over at Game Time, so use them for all your tickets. Evan, thanks for joining us today, my friend.
Thank you for having me.
All right, you got it. Everybody else out there, thanks for listening to Pucks with Haggs podcast. We'll see you at the rink.